Welcome.
Thank you.
So just kind of tell you a little bit about how this process is going to work. Is we have a set of questions that we've been asking all our candidates. It's going to take about an hour or so. And we each are going to ask a few of those questions and then stop and just kind of ask if there's any follow-up question amongst the rest of the council. And then at the end, you'll have an opportunity to ask us any questions that you might have. So welcome. You took a tour of our community yesterday.
I did.
And we did a little meet and greet last night. And we've also gone through your resume, but it doesn't always give us the complete picture of who you are and what experiences you have. So if you could, please start off giving us with a brief summary of your experiences.
Absolutely. I've been in the St. Louis area for 17 years. When I moved there, I worked for the city of Fenton, and that was an internship, and became the assistant to the city administrator there. I was there about 2.5 years. Went to the County Municipal League, which is essentially a clearinghouse for the municipalities in St. Louis County, and they provide information. They do a little bit of lobbying in Jefferson City on behalf of the municipalities in St. Louis County. I was there about 2.5 years and went to the city of Ellisville, where I was the assistant for 2 years and the city manager for approximately 8 years.
Okay, thank you. Why are you applying here? And how do you think your style and expertise will be a good fit for us?
I've always enjoyed Manistee. Been through the city quite a bit. I've got family in Traverse City, originally from Michigan. And when I saw the position was open, I thought it would potentially be a good fit for me, and love the water and love the location, and all of that is proving to be true. I've enjoyed it.
You know, the resume gives us a little bit more about your work experience. But can you tell us a little bit more about yourself and what you do outside of work hours?
Absolutely. Love the outdoors. Like to hike, love the winter sports, and do some gardening, and grow my own vegetables, and try to unwind the best I can. Sometimes this position can be very demanding, and I like to do things that are a little more low-key, and enjoy those when I can.
Now, going back through your career and looking at the different accomplishments that you've had, can you tell us 2 of them that you take the most pride in?
I think probably the most important to me is the quality staff that I was able to hire in my previous position. Many of those staff members are still there, and I still talk to them on a regular basis, but I think they have proven to be a huge asset for that municipality. I think the other aspect of my position, my skill that I'm also proud of, is my ability to collaborate, whether it be with other municipalities, with other agencies within the area. The municipality I was previously employed at had a strained relationship with a neighboring community for a number of years, and I, along with my counterpart in that municipality, planned a retreat and got the councils together to, one, to meet each other, because they really didn't know each other, and two, to talk about opportunities that we could collaborate on, take advantage of economies of scale, and it was extremely successful, and there's still some collaboration that the 2 municipalities do as a result of those meetings.
Okay. And that first accomplishment that you're talking about, were you the sole person hiring, or was there like a team effort that approved them?
I was the final decision maker in most of the interviews. Excuse me. I would set in certainly department heads. Some of the positions within the departments I would set in on, but all hiring and firing is the authority of the city manager. So.
Thanks. Are there any follow-up questions? Councilman? Councilman?
Yes, good afternoon. Have you ever been terminated, asked to resign, or resigned before termination action? Tell us all about it.
Absolutely. My previous position, I was terminated. The In St. Louis, most of the municipalities rely on sales tax as their major source of revenue. And the municipality I was employed at had seen a decline over the last 20 years, and the city council was very proactive, put forth a $100,000 planning effort. We hired a planning firm to identify areas within the community that they thought had potential for redevelopment. The city began to exercise that plan once it was completed, and they sent out a request for proposals for development on one of those areas. We received a proposal back. The city accepted it, approved the development. It was about a year process, but they approved the development. Of course, there were some in the community that were opposed to the development and really opposed to any development within the community, and they ran for office. Some of them got elected, and was able to put the brakes on that development, and they saw staff as being part of that previous council, and they really didn't understand the role of a city manager, and didn't understand that the city manager acts at the direction of the city council. But as a result of that, they fired the city attorney, city manager, and a longtime city clerk resigned. So it was over a development, and for many of them it became very personal, and there were much of information that was published in the newspaper, much of the information wasn't true. In this position, it's very difficult to try to address each one of those things in the paper that isn't true. Though the council did the best they could to try to do that, and I tried to do it. Some of that stuff was published and now retracted when they found out it wasn't true. I would just like to add that in that position, I was proud of all the work that we did there in the 10 years that I was there, and going back, I would do the same thing over again. I'm proud of what we accomplished, and I would do it again.
But what did you learn about yourself, and how did your experiences change or shape your current management style?
Well, my management style, I believe, is, like I said, I have the ability of hiring very quality staff. I think that's the biggest asset of a municipality, is the staff that is employed with the municipality. But my style is to be very direct. I've always let my employees know what my expectations are, but once they know what my expectations are, I give them plenty of opportunity, plenty of autonomy to do their job and to manage their departments. I see the role as a city manager as being there as a support for the staff and helping them when they need help, but giving them the room to do their jobs.
Okay, on that line, what kind of adjustments would you have to make in your style or approach to be successful in our culture?
I'm sorry, what was that last part?
In our culture. What do you put Manistee?
Well, I would like to say that I've been very impressed with the staff that I've met here. Everybody's been very friendly, and I think the city's done a great job of hiring and retaining some very, very good quality employees. I think in terms of adjustments that I would have to make to the culture, I really don't believe there would be very many adjustments. I think just the learning curve of getting to know the area, all of the agencies, and that learning curve of getting to know Manistee and the specifics of the community, I think would be the one thing that I would focus on within the first 6 months.
Okay, if you're out the position in Manistee, but how would you stay in touch with the residents and the business community and the community at large?
I like to be out on the street. I like to go to receptions, to concerts. In my experience, many times residents have an intimidation factor about coming into City Hall, or would much prefer to talk out on the street or at a concert or at an outing or an event. So I think that's key. always had an open door policy in my office, which of course I would here as well, but getting out and meeting people and interacting at different events, I think is certainly key, and key in pushing forth transparency with the city hall and residents. Thank you.
I see with the city, you were first 2 years as an assistant city manager.
Yes.
And then, went into the role of the city manager. Was that, at that time, did you have to apply for it? Was it just an automatic roll into? And what qualities as assistant manager do you think they saw in you to get into that role?
The previous city manager, my supervisor, was terminated as well. And I joke with people who say that the previous 4 city managers before me were all terminated. And I was there more than twice as long as those 4 combined, so I'm proud of that. But I was the interim for about 13 months in that role, and I had quite a bit of responsibility when the city manager was there as well, and worked very well with the council. And after the interim term, they then hired me as the permanent city manager.
Okay. Was that on a trial? Did they go through an interview process, much like what we're going through here?
Well, they wanted to do it sooner, but there was going to be an election, and we were really unsure how that election was going to go, and it was really my request to wait until after the election.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
No.
You know, you made a comment, you asked, 4 previous city managers were also terminated. It seems like a culture of the council, or can you add anything to that?
There were different council members, different councils. The 10 years that I was there, it was a great group of folks, and there was a lot of stuff getting done. You know, I think some of those that they hired in that position really weren't ready for it, and I think the council felt that they just weren't a good fit, and that the city has had some turmoil over the last 20 years, and there wasn't one thing. The city managers really weren't ready, and I think the council just felt they weren't a good fit. Many of them were pretty surprised at the termination.
What made you a better fit than the previous ones, the last one?
I think I've got a good ability to communicate with council. When I took the role, I would submit a weekly report to the council every week, every Friday afternoon, and I really made a big effort to better lines of communication with the city council, called them regularly, and I think that went a long way with that council at the time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I guess I want. When we call on individuals you've worked with over the past years, what are they going to say about you?
I think they'll say I'm fair, supportive, honest, forthright. I think some of those that I work closely with would have only good things to say about me.
If you show us what's the first, what are you going to do in the first 3 months that you're here? What's your priorities?
The first 3 months would be, I would really try to do a meet and greet. I would try to get out, introduce myself to the other agencies, the other county commissioners. I met a couple last night, but I would make a large effort to get out and meet as many of the stakeholders, business owners, try to meet as many residents as I could. One of the things that I always did was, depending on what was being discussed at a council meeting, we typically had the regulars at a council meeting, but always made an effort before council meetings to introduce myself to some of those residents that I didn't know, and would give them my card and let them know if they needed anything they could call. And that went a long way. I had a number of residents that over the years would call me about small things that I could help them on. I always had a good relationship with the residents. I enjoyed the challenge of having somebody upset and being able to work with them. I didn't always give a resident the answer they wanted to hear, but I think I took the time to explain why we couldn't do what they were requesting. But getting out and talking, meeting and greeting with residents would be my priority over the first 3 months.
So, would that be the most important thing that you would try to learn about the city, the first off? What would be the most important?
Well, I've got a pretty good grasp of the budget, and it would really be keeping that line of communication open with the council. I really want to get a good understanding of the direction of leadership that the city council would like. I mean, ultimately, the city council is the one that passes legislation, and the job of the city manager, as you know, is day-to-day operations. But I think it's important for the city manager to be aware of current items on the agenda, so that I think one of the other important responsibilities is providing you all with the information you need to make an educated, informed decision.
My last question. What do you see in Manistee that sets us apart from other places you have worked? And what particular skills, talents, or experience do you have that will make your tenure here successful?
I think the location, the setting here at Manistee is absolutely beautiful. There's a lot of really nice communities along the western side of the state, but I think seeing the opportunities for manufacturing here, I think, is a little different than other municipalities on this side of the state, because many of the cities north don't have a good manufacturing base or those decent paying jobs. So I think there's a really good foundation here. One of the goals that I would work on is trying to, I do have some experience in economic development, and it would be working with the council and trying to put together a good marketing plan and trying to attract the manufacturing and types of jobs that the city would like to see here.
Follow-up questions? It's good.
From what you've learned about us, what do you think the 2 biggest challenges will be in the next 3 years? How would you tackle them, and what process would you follow?
Well, I think taking a hard look at the budget, I think it appears that the city's done well with the limited revenue source that they have, that you all have. It would be taking a hard look at the budget and making sure that the funds are being directed in the right locations. Make sure that they're meeting the priority of the city council. And that's never an easy task. I mean, anytime you take money from something, you're not going to make somebody happy, or somebody's going to be upset. So I think that's key in this time. I mean, most municipalities are trying to maintain and keep a high level of service with less funds. We experienced that in my previous municipality. We had flat and declining sales tax revenues, and the city was able to maintain all the services that they had in place for a number of years. So I think that would be a big priority.
You toured the community yesterday. And let's say you're the city manager. What's on your to-do list already? What's on your to-do list?
Meeting with staff, I think they've got a great understanding of what the city's needs are moving forward. I think that, like I said, the city has a great foundation. The parks are absolutely magnificent, but there are some infrastructure needs here, and I would begin working with staff. And I think one of the things that I've always been complimented for is my creativity, and I would work with staff and try to come up with some means of addressing some of the infrastructure issues that the city has.
What is the most difficult ethical challenge you have faced in a municipal executive? Tell us how you handled it and what you would do differently now, if anything.
Well, it was my termination. When some of those newly elected officials came in, they were expecting me to act at the direction of individual council members. I put forth a big effort to try to educate them that the city manager's job is to act at the direction of the council as a whole and not at the direction of one council member. I had individuals requesting specific documents, which my policy has always been, if one council member requests a document, I provide it to everybody, because I think it's important that everybody has the same information when you're making a decision on something. So I was being put in a position to act at the direction of individuals that had differing opinions or motives on items. It was a very difficult position to be in. I understood that my position was on the line, but I continued to keep an open dialogue with every council member, and despite the fact that they would direct me not to provide it to everybody, I did it anyway. And as a result of that, I ended up losing my job. And if I could do it over again, I would do it exactly the way I did it.
What is the most important skill as a manager can you have when it comes to manager-council relationships success?
I think one of the areas I've thrived in is being able to work on consensus building with the council. Over, I would say, my first 8.5 years, had a very, very good track record with the council, and they were able to accomplish a lot of really neat projects. And I think they would say that part of it was due to my collaboration and working closely with the council on those things. Thank you.
You obviously went through a very difficult time with that council. How would your staff say or tell us how you handled that?
Well, for most of the time that I was there, I insulated the staff from a lot of the things that went on. In that community, the city council is prohibited from directing any staff. So, though some tried to do that, most did not take a lot of that to the staff. So I did the best I could to insulate them up until the point when I was suspended. I think they would say that it was handled pretty well, because much of it they weren't aware of.
And how did you personally handle it? How were you able to carry on city functions while going through such a difficult situation?
It was stressful, but I was able to function, like I normally would. I certainly took advantage of my vacations to recoup and be ready for more. But it was certainly a stressful year. But I think everybody would say I handled it fairly well.
Sure.
First of all, thank you for sharing a difficult situation. I know it can be challenging, not only in an interview, but in a panel of interviewing and on TV and in front of an audience. So I appreciate your willingness to share that. It's got to be a difficult time. And the last question, we talked a little bit about some of your tactics or your skill sets with managing a city manager-council relationship. And you said consensus building and some collaboration. most councils and most boards have a very diverse group of individuals with all different levels of communication strategies. What are some of the tools you use to reach everybody on their comfort level medium?
Well, I spent a lot of time with the council that was in place during the majority of my tenure, and I spent a lot of time talking with each one-on-one, and getting to know them, getting to know what their priorities were. I think it's important for the city councils to understand, even though they might have different opinions on specific subjects, everybody wants to see the best for their community. And some just have different ways of achieving that goal. So there were times when I couldn't get them all to see the big picture, but many times it's just trying to talk to them individually, talking about the big picture, trying to explain, if you had a council member that didn't even want to speak to another council member, sometimes I would try to convey that thought or why that council member felt the way they did. So it's a lot of time, a lot of effort, but I think I was pretty successful at it.
Thank you.
You mentioned that you're creative. There were some creative ideas. Can you give me a couple examples of your creativity and some of the neat projects that you talked about that you were able to accomplish?
Sure. We had an old aquatic center. It was an outdoor aquatic center in that municipality that was going on 35 years, and had a study, and there were some structural issues in the bathhouse because of the years and years of the chemicals in the filtration room. So the structure itself had some issues, and the city had to immediately close that pool facility and didn't have a plan in place to replace that facility. And at the time, the city didn't have a revenue stream to take out a bond for building a new facility. So the council had discussed it, and some of them didn't know what to do and felt that the city would hold it against them for closing the pool and not replacing it. So I went to them and said that I think it was a pretty easy solution, and in that area, this municipalities have the right to pass local sales tax options. There's about 6 that the municipalities can pass, and I told them that they could put a 1/4 cent sales tax increase on the ballot, and if it doesn't pass, the residents are speaking. If it passes, that will provide them the revenue stream for the bond and the new facility. And they liked the idea, and that's what they did, and the residents passed it by a 70% majority. And that's how they built their new rec center, or aquatic center, excuse me.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
Kevin, again, thank you for being forthright. My first question is going to kind of deal with the council also, but what is the most important role the council plays in the success of the community's future, and what will you do to assure that we are effective in that task?
Well, the city council is the true leaders of the city. You're the legislative body that passes the ordinance that really steers the city in the direction that you want to see it go in. Of course, I think the city manager plays that role, that they carry out the direction of the council as a whole, but I think the city council is the body that sets that direction.
Do you find it best to provide your council with recommendations for action, or merely options from which they might choose?
In the councils that I've worked with in the past, I have provided them information when they've requested my professional opinion. I've given it. Sometimes they would ask me for my professional opinion, sometimes they didn't. But I see my role as providing them as much information as possible so that they can make city council can make an informed decision.
What tools or techniques do you use to ensure council's always well prepared to make the best possible decision?
What tools do I use? I try to make sure that they read the packet before the meeting, which is sometimes difficult. Certainly had a number that were opening their packets when they sat down at the council meeting. But make sure that if they have any questions regarding the information I've provided, I was always accessible to them, whether it's to talk on the phone or meet with them. But try to be there to answer any questions and provide as much information on the material that they were provided and the subjects at hand.
Are you more of a manager or a leader? And can you describe how you exemplify the best of that quality?
Well, I think some days I'm a manager and some days I was a leader. I think it depended on the situation, but I think it's important to have good quality staff around you. I think the manager is as good as the staff that's working under him. But I was always there to help lead if they needed leadership, if they had a problem or an issue. I think all of my department heads would tell you that I was there whenever they needed help. And but I think it's extremely important to provide them autonomy so that they can do their jobs well.
My last question for you is, when hiring a new department director to join your team, what skills and characteristics would they need to possess and why?
Committed, loyal to the organization, and creative. Those are all key.
I'm gonna follow up to that. I like those three characteristics, but how do you quantify that? How do you know that in an interview with somebody and that they're committed, they're loyal, and they're creative?
Well, I think one thing I always did was check references, and I think their past experience I think is a pretty good indication of their future success. And so I always check references. I don't think somebody's going to do a 180 and be that much different than they were in the past. So that is always key. And I had some that were recommended to me, and on paper, I think they looked as good as anybody else. But I think through the process, we're able to rise to the top. But I think focusing on past successes and what their track record was, I think is a pretty good indication going forward.
And in your time as city manager, how many positions did you fill?
Over the 8.5 years, 6 key department head positions and approximately 25 or 30 other department positions, police officers.
Okay, thank you. That's what I need.
Good afternoon, Kevin, welcome.
Thank you.
I have 3 questions for you. Getting to a collaborative agreement on contentious issues is always difficult. Some municipalities face tough financial choices. Others struggle with resident agreements over the plan for the future. Walk us through a time when you faced a particularly diverse problem and tell us the process.
A problem working with the council, or
You can put it that way too.
any time the council had a contentious issue before them, I always had council members talking to me about how to handle a situation and how to deal with constituents that may not be in favor of the vote at hand. I always encourage council members to make the best decision that they could, and I always stressed the fact that they needed to be able to explain the reason that they voted the way they did, and that became a big issue in that development. And I had one council member in particular that was pretty distraught at the vote, and I explained to that council member that they should vote their conscience and be able to explain that to their constituents, because some constituents didn't like that, the way that they were going to vote. And I think when it was all said and done, they did just that, and were able to explain to their constituents the reasons for the way that they voted the way they did.
How many council members were there?
6 council and mayor, so 2 from each district.
Next question, Kevin. Looking back over your career so far, what do you see as the most creative or innovative project or program that you were involved with? And tell us about the involvement in getting it done and why.
I think one of the most creative, and I was a part of, was a Great Streets plan that ran through 5 municipalities. The major corridor that ran through our municipality also was a main corridor that ran through our neighboring municipality. So we undertook a large planning project and collaborated with 5 other municipalities and received a $1 million grant to do the planning and implemented that Great Streets plan through those municipalities. So it was a very unique collaboration, and I think it was one that took a lot of effort, and was proud to be part of that.
Was that commercial development or landscape development? What streetlights? What was it?
It dealt with new curbs. We worked closely with MoDOT as they were resurfacing the roadway. We added some medians at some strategic locations and did some new landscaping, new street lights and signals.
That help the community
Beautify that.
evolve, or
It's an older stretch of roadway that's looking very tired, and it just to beautify that section. And as part of that, we've been able to attract some new businesses to the area.
Very good. Last question. Every Michigan community has faced severe financial difficulties over the past decade. When you look at over our budget and forecast for the next couple of years, what do you see? And what do you bring to the table that will help us through the situation?
Well, I do think Manistee has some hard choices to make, in the future. I think everybody's trying to do more with less, and I don't think Manistee is any different than municipalities in Michigan or municipalities down in the St. Louis area. I think we're all dealing with the same thing, and I think it's key to really take a hard look and determine where the priorities of the council are, and make those changes in the budget. But I think it's also important to be able to explain that to the residents. You know, if it's street infrastructure that's going to be delayed, I think it's important to explain that.
Now, with the services that your city has, are they DPW, water, sewer, paid police, paid fire?
Didn't have water and sewer. That was it. But we did have DPW, police, planning. I had 2 engineers on staff, and parks. We didn't have any indoor facilities. We had a number of parks and about 8 miles of trails.
How did you handle the fire protection?
It's provided by a fire protection district that encompasses 3 different municipalities, and they have taxing jurisdiction.
And the police was a paid office?
Police was part of the city, yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Any comment?
Yeah, me last. I was really intrigued by one of the comments you made earlier about the Great Streets Plan, and my question kind of could be tied to that quite easily. Tell us about an intergovernment or regional cooperation effort you have championed in the past, and how you measured their effectiveness.
Well, one, after our aquatic facility was built, after the first 2 years, we certainly had room to increase usership. And I went with the neighboring municipality, which is a much larger community, but they have no aquatic facilities. And a number of their residents were asking for one, and the city didn't want to spend the money to build their own. And so I went to my counterpart in that municipality and talked to them about working out a plan that their residents could purchase at a reduced rate memberships to our aquatic facility. I felt it would certainly generate revenue for the municipality I was employed at, and it would provide an amenity to their residents, and one that they could provide without having to incur the expense of building a new facility. So I went to him, talked to him about it. He was very interested. To my council, they approved the plan. The neighboring municipality approved it, and it's been a plan that's been in place for about 6 or 7 years, and it's been very successful, and it's proven to be a very cost-effective way for them to provide that amenity to their residents as well. So I'm pretty proud of that.
Good. Thank you. Have you had any experience or collaborating with tribal governments?
I do not, no.
Okay. Obviously, from Manistee's community, we do have a tribal entity with the county that we work with.
Very much aware of the tribe.
Okay. In Manistee, the city manager functions as the human resource director, which I'm sure is similar to what you're used to down there. What is the most important long-lasting initiative you've developed regarding employee growth and development? And tell me what measures you use to judge that success.
The city council was very supportive of growth, and each one of the department heads was part of their national association. So I always encouraged, and there were some budget years that I had to fight is not the right word, but I had to lobby on the staff's behalf to keep that in the budget, which I think is very important, and I think it's good when they can go away and be re-energized and come back with new ideas. And I think some of those, whether it be the APA or Public Works, they went to these and came back with some really creative ideas that other places are doing around the country, and I think that was key. In terms of the other employees, we tried to certainly couldn't send everybody every year, but we would try to rotate other employees, and I would talk to the department heads, and if they had an employee that they wanted to send to a particular conference, we were always able to figure that out.
Did you ever have any formalized succession planning programs or development programs to, improve your bench strength for promotions and opportunities for growth?
For some key positions, we did. Certainly for the police chief, some of the department heads, we had a succession plan, and the deputy chief would work very closely, and there was quite a bit of overlap, depending on the position. So in certain key positions, we did have some succession plans.
The city manager is also responsible for negotiating contracts with 4 different unions. Tell us about an experience you had with public unions, and explain what you do to approach that negotiation process, and then obviously post-negotiation and contract ratified, what's that relationship like with those employees?
Yes. Though I haven't worked in a municipality with a union, I have considerable contract negotiation experience and would certainly use those skills.
So no union contract negotiation, but project-based or construction union or contracts and things like that?
That is correct, yes.
Okay.
Any follow-up questions? I just have one going back to the collaboration with the intergovernmental units. It sounds like where you were located, you were very close to other neighboring municipalities that also had city managers that you collaborated on a regular basis. Is that what you're saying?
That is correct, yes. It was part of the metropolitan area in St. Louis. So within the county of 1 million people, there's approximately 40 city managers, city administrators in that area. So it gave an opportunity to collaborate on my neighboring counterparts, but also with some of the other municipalities in the county. We had a salt purchase co-op that included approximately 40, 50 municipalities that we took advantage of the economies of scale, purchased salt that was brought up the Mississippi, and it was unloaded at one municipality and then delivered to the other municipalities.
And when you were collaborating with the other intergovernment, your other counterparts,
Yes.
How did you see, what was your role? More a leadership type?
The first time we got together with my counterparts, it was when that process first began. They had a need. They had a need for, it was right after a storm, and they needed to rent a tub grinder, and we owned a tub grinder, and I told them that we would work with them and rent it to them at a rate that we were passing along our cost, and it was pretty successful. And they still have that agreement in place whenever there's storms, and this municipality I was employed at is not using it. So that was really the impetus for getting together and starting to talk about different things that we could work together on. And so we had the various department heads get together with their counterparts and began talking about things that they could collaborate on. So it was pretty successful.
Okay, thank you. And I know you had a chance to tour Manistee yesterday, and as you can see, we have we have a long history. And many believe that we're probably at a crossroad for us to strategically move into the next direction. How would you help guide our community with its vision, and how do we capitalizing on our assets to get there?
Manistee is in a gorgeous location. The setting's beautiful. I think that the infrastructure, the foundation is here for really going out and marketing hard companies to come here. I think I would certainly want to focus on that. I think that's key. I think it's important for the city to really take a look at what kind of marketing strategies the city could put forth to try to attract some of those companies that they would like to, that you all would like to see here. I think that's key. I think everybody's competing for companies with good paying jobs, and I think having a good marketing plan with some incentives in place is key. I think the downtown is certainly on the comeback. I went into a lot of the shops. There's some very cute shops, very nice, but of course there's some vacancies, and some of the areas are a little underutilized. So I think over the next 5 to 10 years, I think Manistee's in a position for some really great things.
Economic development and redevelopment can take many forms. Tell us about your experience in that field.
We only had opportunities for redevelopment. We were a landlocked municipality that was built out, so we had to take a hard look at areas that could be redeveloped. And through that process, I, along with our planning director, met with all of the stakeholders in those areas. So I worked very closely with stakeholders on those areas that we did that major planning effort. So I've got considerable experience there. Some other retail developments I was a key role player on, and working closely with developers on that. So I do have extensive experience working with outside developers.
I have a quick follow-up to that, if I may, Mayor. As you may have noticed when you toured Manistee, there's a lot of opportunities for some redevelopment as well as new development. And I'm thrilled that you have some background in that redevelopment strategy. Can you explain some of those strategies that you've implemented down for redevelopment?
Absolutely. And those areas that I was referring to as part of that big planning effort, excuse me, the council did a great job in taking a hard look with the planning firm that we used, and came up with some tools, whether it's public-private partnership, using tax increment financing, or in Missouri they've got community improvement districts, transportation development districts that are key marketing strategies that can be used, and depending on the area, really depending on which one of those tools that the city was willing to provide to develop those areas.
Thank you.
Have you ever worked with the DDA?
Pardon me?
Have you ever worked with the DDA, Downtown Development Authority?
Yes, I have. My previous municipality ran really through the chamber, and we had a president that was pretty active, and I did serve on the chamber board for a term.
Thanks. All right, switching gears a little bit, tell us about your comfort with technology and how you use it as an effective presentation, communication, and engagement tool.
Well, I think it's becoming more important every day. I think I've got a fairly good grasp of all of the tools that I need as a city manager. I think I'm very fluent with Excel and spreadsheets, and of course use Word every day. So I've got a pretty good grasp of those. In terms of IT, I always had an employee that would help on major hardware issues. So I think in terms of day-to-day use, I've got a very good grasp.
Okay. Any follow-up? Is there anything that you would like that we didn't cover that you would like us to know?
I think I did want to go back to my termination. I think much of what was printed in the newspaper wasn't true. One of the items that was printed was that I was terminated for cause, and at the time that the city council, I had a contract, so it exercised my arbitration, and when they realized that they were going to have to be deposed and answer questions under oath, 11 months later they paid me my severance and all my attorney's fees. So there was no cause. They claimed that in the paper, but that was not the case. It was all due to the development.
Okay, appreciate that, thank you. Okay, now we're going to turn the tables onto you. We've asked you a lot of questions. Now it's your turn. Are there any questions that you have of us that you need to know to help determine whether this community be a good fit for you?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, one, I would like to hear from each one of the council members, if you could talk to me a little bit about leadership. And I know there was information in the paper about going in another direction or looking at another leadership style. I'm curious with the council, truly being the leaders of the municipality and setting the course, what do each of you see as the direction for the municipality in the next 5-10 years?
I think we need a leader with some vision. Take what we have and improve on it and see if you can't expand, especially, job creation is always one, but also our beaches are also tourist attractions, stuff like that. And try to make Manistee a point of destination, someplace that people want to come to and also be job created at the same time, blend it all together. That's what I think we're looking for.
I'm looking for something new, creative, maybe even redefining who we are. Kind of a fresh start.
I think when you look at our strategic plan, Kevin, you're seeing the future going forward. One of the concerns that you probably heard in talking to people, that I hear from people all the time, is how we're going to get ahead of the power curve and get enough money to fix our streets. It's great having tourism and stuff like that, but the place needs to be a good place to live, work, and play. There's three key elements to that. There's precious little funding available to work on streets and infrastructure, and some of the streets are waiting until we get money to fix utilities that are under the streets at the same time, so we're not fixing it twice and such. So I think, it's just some view that it's time to look in a different direction, maybe try something different. Over time, sometimes things get stale or people get tunnel vision. It's a wonderful community. I think there's great opportunities within the community. I think that's the different direction, looking towards something, some sort of change to the future.
I guess my view on it is, obviously we're landlocked, specifically with the lake and in north. We have, as Mayor Pro Tem Smith pointed out, we want to be a place of destination. We recognize we want to provide jobs. We have a lot of people, head of household jobs in our community. We want a place where it's a quality of life, but it's also difficult to balance our funds, the money that we're generating, to provide like the Ramsdale Theater, those quality of life issues, the beaches, along with the infrastructure, the roads. And there's always a pull amongst our community where the priorities are. Everybody agrees that, a lot of people agree that we need it all. Some think we should just focus on infrastructure. We have a strategic plan, and how do we fulfill that strategic plan and prioritize our needs in there? And I guess when we keep talking creative, everybody also feels that we have, our taxes are too high. So how do we creatively start funding and prioritizing our infrastructure and trying to be a good place to live, and provide those quality beaches and parks and whatnot? And I guess what I hear is we're looking for somebody who can help come up with those ideas. How can we do it all? Realizing, that's a difficult and almost impossible task, but looking for somebody who can probably come up with some ideas or help guide us to achieving those goals.
So pull out your magic wand. No. For me, it kind of encapsulates a lot of what was spoken here. And I think it boils down to creating strategy. What's our strategic plan for 1, 3, 5, 7, and long range? And how do we get community involvement in that? And how is that going to be adaptable as we move forward? Because what we think is a priority today for 3 years may change next year based on a storm, based on a change, maybe based on a new business coming in. So I think managing a strategic goal. We're going to Disney World, but how do we get there? Do we take a 995? Are we taking 75 down? What's our strategy to get there? And I think that has to have some adaptability based on construction and other issues that we're going to see moving down that road. But I do think, as Mayor Penny and there's some council members, there's some key pieces within this community that are pretty important. Infrastructure, key services, and our historical significance. And some of those components are very contentious, and but I do think the way to navigate through that is that strategic planning process, by getting community involvement, by getting to manage that and adapt that as we see the budget move forward. So my mindset, and it always has been this way, ever since I went through strategic planning certification 20 years ago, is create a plan and work it. It's not written in stone, but it's adaptable as we move forward. So, creating some of that, and then having that communication structure that follows up with that, so the community can see where we took a right turn where we normally were going to go straight, but that's because of this, or that's because of that. So,
I guess I agree with every their thoughts and views are. Mine are, as a city manager, you're the face of the community. You're out front, you're leading this community. So to have a strong leader and be strong in economic development.
I do want to say that, in my previous position, we did allocate quite a bit of money to streets. It's not an easy decision, and I was fortunate to have a revenue stream that was focused on streets, and there is no easy answer, and I know you all know that. It's a large commitment over decades, and as I mentioned before, everybody's trying to do more with less, and I understand that position. It's not an easy one, and I know money's being allocated for streets. It would certainly be nice to do more, but I certainly understand your role, and there is no easy answer there. So, I wanted to talk just a minute about staffing and get your thoughts on the staffing in the city. Do you feel that the level of staff that the city has now is adequate? Do you feel it's ideal? What's the council's thoughts on the current staff level?
I would say that the staff level probably is not the ideal staff level, if we were to be honest and truthful, but it's what we can afford. And we have a great staff. I think they do a great job of doing what they have with what they have got. And we've reduced headcount over the years, but I would have to say we haven't really reduced the services, and that's a tribute to our staff. We are adding back a little bit in our finance area. We're adding a headcount there. In our DPW, we're looking at. So we're trying to look as we can, looking where the best places are to get the most services for the positions.
and just to add to that, I'm glad you brought that up, because I do think probably from any facility you've worked at, or a municipality you worked at, there's staffing issues. And as Mayor Kenny led to over the last 15 years or 10 years, really since the huge recession hit, we've reduced staff significantly without reducing services, but that has come at some stress levels. And so my opinion would be that the incoming city manager take a hard look at, where we're at with that. And if we're at levels that are creating too much stress or too much pain, that we consider changes, improvements, or additional headcount. Again, I don't know, have all those figures figured out, but I have talked to several staff members knowing that there's some pain. And where does that take us to? Because we don't want to lose the good people we have.
The brunt of the funding cuts in economy during the downturn were at the expense of staff. So we're down from historic levels. Are we where we would like to be now? I would agree with the mayor, probably not. But I would say also when you look at contracting functions or going to the state or the county to supply functions, in a lot of instances you lose a level of service to the community. The individuals end up paying more for building permits. They end up waiting longer to have inspection performed. Things tend to get a little bit more cumbersome, not as timely, so there's resentment to that. But sometimes when you look at the economics of it, a change is necessary. But good, loyal people that work for the city are always near and dear to my heart. And we have a room full of them here and out there in the various departments. So.
You all talked to me about the city and going forward and some of the needs, but in terms of the new city manager coming in, what do you see as the number one priority for the city manager in the first 6 months?
Well, in my opinion, your first 3 months, I think, you talked about getting out there, talking to people, listening. I think that's important. That you listen before you act. You understand before you act. And then from there, having good communication skills, having patience and understanding, a good knowledge of, a working knowledge of the departments, of your state laws, your, understanding the municipalities and the regulations here, reaching out to we've worked really hard over the last few years to develop a relationship with our other municipalities surrounding us, with our tribal government, maintaining those relationships, improving upon those relationships, hopefully finishing some long-term contracts that we've got in place. Really having someone that can go out in the community and work well with a wide range of people, not only with council and staff, but the community at large.
Specifically, if Mr. Byfoss isn't successful in the next 3 months, there's an agreement with Father Township, there's an agreement with Manistee Township, there's some economic development things that are on the horizon, and then obviously we have some relationships with communities our neighboring communities to create some longevity and improved communication between that's been damaged over the years. Mr. Byfoss has done a phenomenal job in the short time he's been here of reestablishing communication and reaching out, but we have some work to do. And with his change, we don't want to see any of that progress, take a step backwards. So those are some key pieces. And then there's no question that our streets and infrastructure are a key component for us moving forward. So.
Yeah, I would go municipalities relations.
It's hard to imagine that something that happens in Potter Township or Manistee Township or with the tribe doesn't have an impact on the city of Manistee. And I think all the communities that border each other need to work cooperatively together and in a supportive role. Not one dominate the other. It's a community at large, and like I say, what's good for one is generally good for all. So I think that attitude needs to be embraced, and the new manager would have to meet and greet the counterparts in those areas and strive to continue on with the relationship that Ben has established, especially with Filer Township and Manistee Township, and negotiating agreements from a fair and equitable, but also getting a buy-in from people because of what the city residents have contributed to the infrastructure. Fair in where both parties or all parties feel as though they win in a situation. There's always a better situation where someone feels they were taken advantage of or held ransom, because someone had all the dominoes and they couldn't play, so that's important. Getting to know the people. We ask everybody about service organizations, but there's Kiwanis clubs, there's Rotary clubs, I'm sure there's civic organizations that can be addressed and spoken to. People that are influential that can help move the process forward.
I think another step that Mr. Byfoss has done an extraordinary job. And as the new city manager is prepping Manistee for the expansion that's going to happen, inevitable expansion, to the north and south in Filer Township and Manistee Township. We already have a mayor that has started there. They take our water and sewer. What's going to come next and next and next to the north and to the south. So
It's very helpful. Thank you. That's all the questions I have.
I appreciate your time and coming out here, speaking with us.
Thank you for your questions. They were
Yeah, thank you.
insightful, and made me think that you took it seriously. So.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity. Appreciate coming up. I think that the city's got some great opportunities going forward. I know I certainly can do the job, but I think my skills and my strengths, I think would line up pretty well with Manistee. You guys have a good decision. I wish you all the best. So, thank you.
Thank you.